dear friend. Thank you for joining us. Not your usual day or time, but much appreciated. I want to spend a fair amount of time with you on the more recent events in and around Israel. But before we do, there is some relatively breaking news on the Ukraine front. What is your take on this invasion of Kursk by a supposedly crack or top team of Ukrainian soldiers?
I think the Ukrainians received some good intelligence from us. Remember, we have space-based surveillance. We can see most everything most of the time, especially in Russia and Ukraine. I'm sure that we have our eyes on the front line trace and also the Russian border. And they identified an area that was very, very weakly defended with only 30, 40, 50 policemen, and said, this is an opportunity for you to storm across the border into an area where there's really nothing to stop you and demonstrate that you can penetrate into Russia itself. And this will create the illusion that there is still life left in the Ukrainian military and that everybody should contribute money to you. I think that's what happened.
Interesting word, illusion. I mean, is there any military target that was attacked or a military purpose served, or is it just a PR stunt?
Well, you call it a PR stunt, but some people were killed and some were wounded. I don't know precisely how many, so it was more than a PR stunt. But obviously, when 1,000 men come out of a forest and storm your position and you have 50 policemen to stop them, it's a rather short encounter. So I think the real purpose was, yes, to demonstrate what we said. We're still in the fight and we can do these things. The Russians have reacted not in a panic by any means. They reacted very deliberately, sending forces into the area. And I think this will result in a stiffening of border surveillance and security by the Russians.
In reality, how weak does the Ukrainian military remain farther west, where the Russians continue to decimate it?
Well, we don't have exact numbers, and they're difficult to come by right now, but I would be surprised if you have more than 100 or 150,000 troops left that can actually mount any kind of serious defense. There are certainly more than just 150,000 milling around. But remember, the country is being stripped out of whatever they can find for manpower. People are being shoved into uniform, handed a weapon, given a little bit of training, maybe a few days, and sent forward. So it's literally an exercise in recruiting, forcibly recruiting cannon fodder. So Ukraine is really finished. Now, people keep asking, well, then why don't the Russians move forward? And again, I've tried to explain this, that the Russians don't want a settlement which involves their governing Ukrainians.
Right.
They control what's Russian right now. They still are interested in Kharkov and Odessa, Russian-speaking cities historically. But they really don't want to advance much further west because you're just taking over areas that are filled with hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. And the Russians aren't stupid. They know the Russians are not welcome. They don't want to get into a fight there. They don't want to end up, killing civilians to suppress them, which is what the Soviets did. So they'd rather end this on what they think are the terms that make sense, which is for them to retain control of what I just described. And we're not willing to do that. Zelensky says he won't do it, but I think he's going to be forced to before long.
Is there any military significance to the arrival and ostentatious display of F-16s in Ukraine?
No, there's so few F-16s involved. These are old airframes. I think they originated in Denmark. They have been updated with more contemporaneous electronics. They can certainly carry weapons. The thing that gives the Russians pause, and one of the reasons that initially President Biden said he would not provide modernized aircraft, was very simply because they can carry nuclear weapons. And as I recall, President Biden said, if we were to do that, then we're marching in the direction of World War III, and that's something I don't want to do. Well, he's crossed that red line. Hopefully they don't have access to anything nuclear. As far as I know, they don't. But that's the only thing that the Russians would be concerned about. The F-16s, they'll be acquired, they'll be targeted and shot down if they're used.
Here's President Zelensky. I'm not sure what he's saying here, but he is showing off the F-16s. Cut number 12.
I can't for today give you details with the missions. I think you will see, maybe not all of them, but you will see the results. We will decide to comment if it was the result with F-16 or not. It's not. I mean, it's not the moment for this. I think it's very dangerous for today. We need to do all the security measures which have been discussed with our partners about using F-16.
They really have no military, but aren't they about 40 years old?
Yes, the airframes originated at least 3 to 4 decades ago.
Okay.
Judge, it's a giant Potemkin village. That's what Ukraine has become. It's a facade. There's not much behind it anymore except suffering people in Ukraine. And then you get these utterly false polls coming out talking about how everybody supports Zelensky. That's just not true. The population there is sick of this, desperately wants an end to the fighting. So this is over except for the facade that we prop up with lots and lots and lots of cash. How else could Mrs. Zelensky drive